I'm your host, Tess Brigham. So let's start making the sense of the mess together. Today, my guest is Alay Yajnik, law firm growth expert, speaker, and the guy attorneys call when they're tired of working nonstop with nothing to show for it. So for more than a decade, Alay has helped solo and small firm leaders earn more, stress less, and finally run their practices like the businesses they are. With a background in scaling multi-million-dollar companies, he brings a fresh business-first perspective to an industry that often resists change. He's also the co-host of Lawyer Boss Life, where he teaches attorneys how to think like CEOs, not just lawyers. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Tess, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it.
So tell me, I want to hear your story about how do you go from building these multi-million-dollar companies to becoming a growth expert for law firms?
Yeah, how much time do we have? I'll give you the short version, and then we can jump in deeper if you want to. So, I've run $100 million business and built a $5 million business from the ground up. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, so a lot of my work had been in Silicon Valley. I spent about 17 years doing that, and then I got tired of the big corporate structure and the work that was going on there. I just found it kind of boring and did some startups, and ultimately none of those startups were successful. And along the way, decided that the startup culture just wasn't a good fit for me and for what I wanted. So I was trying to figure out what to do. And it turns out I was only good at really building businesses and developing people. And it's hard for me to hang out my shingle just doing that.
Yeah.
And I heard about what business coaching was, joined a wonderful franchise called Focal Point to learn about how to, market, sell, and deliver business coaching, and quit my job and started my own business. And that was in 2013.
Wow.
And within about 6 months of doing that, I got my first attorney as a client. And I got another one and another one, another one. And pretty soon, half my client portfolio were all these small law firms. And I actually enjoy working with lawyers. We were getting great results. And so I was talking to my coach, and we decided that, maybe this is a niche for me and we should focus on this. So we said, let's try it for 6 months and see. And, that was over 10 years ago. And here we are.
Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like it obviously wasn't intentional to approach lawyers.
No, I really wish I could. Yeah, I would wish I could have had this master plan. It would have sounded so much more impressive. But honestly, I just sort of fell into it.
Yeah. Well, so what is it? I mean, what do you think it is about attorneys that you enjoy working with them?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. My entire life, I've been in professional services. So right there is a really good alignment between what I've done for businesses to grow them and what attorneys need is professional services. So that right there is good. I love that attorneys are well educated, and they're focused on client service, or focused on making a difference. A lot of those things are things that I've prized throughout my career as well, and I value in others. And so our conversations are really good. There's a lot of like-mindedness, going on. And I respect them for what they bring to the table, which is a deep, deep, deep understanding of the law. And what I bring is a deep understanding of business. And when we put those two things together, it's a really powerful combination.
So, as I was mentioning before we started recording, so both my father and sister are attorneys. And I often say that attorneys produce attorneys, and then they have attorney friends. There's something about that. And because of that, I've spent my whole life around attorneys. And as a therapist myself, I think there's a lot of overlap about what attorneys do and what I do, what therapists do. And I think a lot of it has to do, I mean, obviously there's some differences, but it's interesting when you talk about how I'm just putting myself in the mindset of an attorney trying to build a business. I think there's a lot of similarities to when therapists try to build businesses as well, because there's this thing that you do really, really well over here. And but even you may know some ideas about business, you may have some senses of it, you may work with clients that understand it, or that might be what you're working with them. But building your own business and running it is such a whole different beast than I think anybody has any idea of. It's again, it's why there are so many business coaches. Why so many people right, that why businesses start and fail is that there are these things that make you good at what you do, your profession, that don't actually translate at all to being able to build a really big, successful business.
Yeah, Tess, have you ever read, this is kind of maybe an obscure book, but have you ever read a book called The E-Myth Revisited?
I have. And
So
that was when it was funny because a friend of mine, when I started my business, I mean, I want to say 12, 13 years ago, around the same time that you did, um, he recommended it to me. And I thought the whole time it was going to be like email, like
yeah,
e-commerce, email. And it isn't E's entrepreneur, but yeah, no, it's a great book. It's a great book for anyone
yep. And
who
that
has
that
a
lays a template
profession.
for a lot of these
Yes.
businesses, whether it's attorneys, accountants, therapists, people that are in construction, right? They're really good at something. And they got
Hmm.
into doing it because they really love doing it. So, and I think the E-Myth Revisited was what I think she was
She was,
she owned a bakery or something like
yeah, it
that
was a
because
pie
she
shop.
really pie
Yeah.
shop, right? Because
Yes.
she really loved making pies. Then realized that to be successful, you got to know all of these other skills and have a different approach. That has nothing to do with making pies,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what applies to all of these technical professions. Is it having those technical skills is one thing, but what's going to make someone successful in that business has really not much to do with those technical skills at all. It's about the business skills, and it's a completely
Hmm.
different kettle of fish.
Yeah. Well, and I could also imagine with attorneys might fall into this problem a little bit more than maybe other professions. You can tell me I'm wrong, which is my guess would be that the biggest issue that your clients struggle with is just the amount of hours and time that they're putting into the business, right? Because and working harder, not smarter. And I think it's just my own theory, but I think there's something about these jobs where you work on an hourly basis, where you charge people hourly for your work, that it makes it really hard to think of your business in any other structure besides that, if that makes sense. And so I think it's very easy when you have that kind of business to get stuck there.
It can certainly be a driving factor in things.
Hmm.
I do agree with you. I think the biggest issue that attorneys have is time, and if you dig into that, it's how they use the time, which is directly based on how they view themselves and how they view their value, and it's up here, their whole
Hmm.
mindset and approach towards their business. When that changes, how they use time changes as well. Um, that being said, a lot of attorneys don't bill by the hour. They bill using flat fees or they bill
Hmm.
using contingency fees. They still work really, really hard
Yeah.
though. And that is a common thing. Is the idea is, hey, I'm really good at being an attorney or being a CPA or whatever it is. If I want to be successful, I have to work really hard.
Hmm.
And the harder I work, the more successful I get. I think that adage is absolutely true. But I also think there's a ceiling there. You can only just put your head down and work so hard for so long. You only have 24 hours in a day.
Hmm.
If you don't take time off, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to burn out and you're not going to be able to work as hard as you used to before. And so, if you really have ambitions to build a growing law firm or a thriving business, thinking about how you use your time is a wonderful starting point. Because if you're working too many hours, just kind of grinding away doing the work, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. And that adage about working smarter, not harder, which it comes from the E-Myth and the E-Myth
Hmm.
Revisited, that is exactly true. If you really want to grow your firm, the growth is not going to come from putting in an extra 2 hours of client work. The growth is going to come from looking at your business strategically as a business and thinking about what are the powerful changes you can make that are really going to help you take your business to the next level.
Hmm. So the law profession is one that is pretty traditional, right? And there's not always very different than maybe a startup or tech. So have you run into problems where you've gotten a lot of resistance from some of the firms that you've worked with where it's like, no, no, this isn't how it's done?
Yeah, I don't actually run into those problems because those people don't end up working with me. I mean, literally on my intake questionnaire, there's several questions which are just screening questions, and
Hmm.
they may seem like silly things, like, "Do you want to work smarter, not harder?"
Hmm.
Do you want to be happy or are you happy? Do you
Mm.
want to practice excellence? These are questions that I've had attorneys take this out and they come back to me and they've said, well, duh, who wouldn't? you know? But it's surprising because there are some attorneys, and I'll get these qualified answers, like the work smarter and a harder question. They'll say things like, well, only if I agree with it. And, I have certain parameters and constraints. Like, it's a very long-winded explanation. And that's a clear tell to me that this person is probably not a right fit because they're not open to really making the changes in themselves and in their firm that they need to get to the next level.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's exactly what I thought too, was like, who would write, I want to work harder? But you're absolutely right. I guess you can quantify or qualify, right? Any of these things to do it differently. Um, so it so what is the number? Is it time? Is that the biggest issue that you see most small, mid-level, boutique firms? Is it just not the hours in the day and figuring out how do I spend them?
Well, it kind of depends, Tess. Are we talking symptom or cure? And I mean that
That's a good
deliberately
question.
because,
No,
yeah,
it's a
because
good
when you come into
question.
a doctor's office, you're like I went into physical therapy many, many years ago,
Mhm,
and my elbow was hurting. Like, I can't see it on the screen. My elbow was hurting, my arm was hurting, my wrist was hurting, and the therapist said, okay, fine. And she started working on my shoulder, and I said, look, my shoulder's fine. My issue is with my elbow and my forearm and my wrist. How about
mhm,
we work on that? And she said, well, you don't get it, but there's a nerve that runs all the way down here. It's all connected. And I'll
mhm,
be darned, when she started rubbing my neck and my shoulder, all that pain went away and my grip strength came back. And so
mhm,
that's what I mean by differentiating between symptom and cure.
mhm,
So symptom is, I really, I want to make more money. I'm exhausted and I want more time off. I need to hire a team that takes the work off my shoulders, and I don't know why, and I don't know how to do it.
mhm,
Those are some of the key symptoms we have. The cure is, a big part of it is almost always time management,
mhm,
because you're absolutely right. Like, that is such a powerful lever on driving change in a business that it's something we're always mindful of. The other part of it is really, it's quite frankly teaching them some concepts which they may not be aware of.
mhm,
Things on the financial side, like accounts receivables, and how if you have a large number of accounts receivables, a large dollar amount, that's actually money that you're owed. And a lot of law firms don't go and collect that.
mhm,
The idea about raising your rate every year and how
mhm,
important that is. How to hire somebody, how to interview somebody, how to hire somebody, and then how to make them successful once they come on board. And, oh, by the way, how to write a amazing job ad. All of those
mhm.
business fundamentals really come into play as well.
Yeah. It's interesting talking about raising rates because I think obviously, with attorneys, they have such I mean, it's getting better and better, but they've always had a bad reputation. But I am amazed by how many both attorneys and therapists and all these people that I've interacted with that don't raise their rates, and that the idea of just I've I've said to friends like, well, why don't you just raise your rate? They were like, oh, I guess I could do that. It's funny how people just don't even think they don't even think that that's even
Yeah.
available to them
Or they're
to do
scared.
that.
They think, if I raise my
Yes.
rate, right, I'm going to lose a bunch of clients and no one's going to hire
Hmm.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does feel scary. And I can imagine every single time you make some kind of big change in your business, I feel it too when I do that in my own business. It feels it's the right thing. This is going to be better, but that fear of people could leave. People could they could. It could be the thing that decides, or your new price, or whatever it is. And so sitting in that discomfort can be really challenging.
Oh, it is brutal. And
Yeah.
I try to practice what I preach, even though I'm not a lawyer. We don't work on stuff that I don't try and do myself where I can.
Hmm.
And so, I'm looking at my rates for 2026, and I've just put together a brand new coaching program. And yeah, I'm really worried that this is not going to work. But
Hmm.
that being said, I think it's a great way to give a ton of value, and I'm excited to launch it, and, hey, and learn and see how it can get even better.
Yeah.
So it is really scary.
Yeah.
It's easiest to do it when you're full. Like, when I'm full with clients, then I have
Hmm.
no problems raising my
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've taken with me because my father always worked for himself and for the most part. And when I started my practice, what he told me was you have to get very zen. He's like, you need to get zen about the money and about clients. And it sounds easy. It's all easier said than done, but it's really not attaching yourself to anyone or anything, not attaching yourself to this client or attaching like I need to get this gig or this opportunity or this thing. That when I allow myself to just be and be like, okay, whoever's going to come, whoever's going to go, it makes my life so much easier. But it still doesn't change that. Oh, I have bills to pay. You know, I mean, it's hard. It's a challenging thing for, even if you get to that point where you can be very, Buddhist about all of it. There's still that part of ourselves that are about survival and needing to pay bills and needing to make money and all of that. I don't know what the secret is. If you want to, like, how do you find that part of it? But
I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet either. I mean, when I am looking at building and bringing in clients, I'm definitely not zen about it. I mean, I am very like, go, go, go. Let's get aggressive. Let's see who we can bring in. But it's spot on in that a lot of these opportunities that come up are not going to move to fruition. So if you invest yourself in a lot of opportunities or specific clients, you're devastated, when those clients leave or when those opportunities don't pan out. And you don't want those down moments affecting the rest of your business, because it very easily can. It's kind of like working with clients that you don't enjoy working with. How that can be just it can sabotage the rest of your business,
Yeah, absolutely. And then you end up sort of in these weird cycles of feeling like you're trying to convince people to write and to work with you or to stay. And you're absolutely right when you talked about the questionnaire that you do in the beginning, which is you don't, it's readiness. You have no control over the readiness of your clients. So if they're not ready, they're not ready. So I want to talk about the generations now, because I had the opportunity to speak to a group of your clients about Gen Z, and it was very fascinating, very interesting to hear what they had to say. So tell me a little bit about what are you seeing with your the firms that you're working with and their feelings about this younger generation?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of angst about it, and a lot of concern and a lot of complaining. I, something that you said to the group still comes up in that group all the time, and it's something that I've carried with me too.
Okay, what have I said? What did I say?
And this is, I'm not going to pin this on a specific generation, but the idea has changed to, how little can I work and still get paid?
Yes.
And now we're seeing how little can I work and still get a raise. And the idea of, earning that raise, and we're recording this is towards the end of the year. So a lot of my clients are thinking about year-end bonuses and raises and all these things. The expectations from their employees is way out of line with their level of performance. I mean, I'm seeing that all over the place right now.
Yeah. And so what's your advice or thoughts?
Well,
what's the solution?
Yeah, gosh, boy, if I just had a
I just
solution
asked
to
you a
that,
big question.
I could retire tomorrow. But for me, it starts, with my approach to raises and evaluations of any kind in general, is that people should never be surprised when they're getting an evaluation or having a raise type of conversation. So if someone's not doing well, they should already know they're not doing well. They probably shouldn't expect a big raise. If someone's doing well, they should know they're doing well, and they should expect to be, compensated for that. And a lot of times that conversation, that level setting isn't happening. And so an employee is coming into a meeting with their boss once a year to talk about how they're doing, and then tying that to a raise. And so if you get no feedback as to, what you're not doing well or what you are doing well, God knows what their mentality is coming into that meeting. And so I think that's driving a lot of it. The other part of it is there is some truth to wanting a raise. And this is where people, attorneys, at least a lot of the clients I have, kind of get a little mixed up is the wrong word, but they kind of think about things as like, should you get a raise and how much should you get, without thinking about there's two components to a raise. One is, just keeping up with inflation, keeping up with rising costs, right? there has to be an adjustment just for cost of living, right? You can call it a COLA, cost of living adjustment, or whatever you want to call it, but just a minimal raise, just so the person is, keeping up with rising expenses.
Yeah.
Then there is the performance raise on top of that, which can take many ways and shapes and forms. But that is, if you're doing really, really well, you'll get more than that. If you're not doing really, really well, you might not get more than that. So that whole conversation feeds into developing a system for handing out raises and what that would look like. But it still doesn't address the elephant in the room, which is the expectations of the employee. And I think a lot of that is the changing times. They've grown up and come up in a very prosperous time for the world. And things aren't that great for a lot of people right now. And it's probably going to get more challenging over the next few years because this stuff runs in cycles. So once they go through a cycle, I think their mindset's going to be very different. But that's where they are now.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and I talked about this on this podcast on a solo show, was someone gave this great example of 100%, 70%, which is, right, the old formula, or the formula has always been, okay, you build this many hours, you get paid this much. And what one of your coaching clients was saying was that, well, that's not really what's happening anymore. It seems like people want to do about 70% of the hours, but want 100% of the money. And the thing is that I think if you take a step back and just look at that from that place, you go, well, that makes no sense. Like that's not even. But what I've been trying to express to people, again, I'm not saying this is the fix, but this is sort of what's happening, is that we live in this world that feels a lot more taxing and a lot more difficult than it once did in different ways. I think that social media and the technology and everything, and how much information we have coming at us, and all of the big life events have made it so that I think we are far more burned out, far more tired, far more exhausted than we were. And what I see a lot of is young people coming into the workforce trying to protect their mental health. And so to protect their mental health, yeah, they probably should work 70%, but financially they need to earn the 100%. And so, and again, I don't blame your clients for feeling a little bit like, well, how does that work? Right? Like, cause it's directly what we're making, what you're billing, bringing that in. But it is this very strange place that we've gotten to where the cost of living is just skyrocketing and people's ability to cope is dropping and reducing. So I think this is a lot of what we see. And I think in law firms, it's pretty clear because they're billing hourly, or what you're saying, right? Maybe project by project. But I think we see it in a lot of in other professions, just in different ways. It just shows up differently. But this one, with the hour to hour ratio, you can see it very clearly.
Yeah, and it's because those firms test that bill by the hour. They have hourly production requirements, so you have to hit 1,700, 1,800 hours a year. At a big firm, 2,000 hours a year to fall into the bonus category. It's very quantitative. And it doesn't, for the most part, doesn't take into consideration the quality of those hours. So someone's 1,200 hours might be more productive than someone's 1,500 hours because the 1,200 hours has no write-offs, very high quality work. The 1,500 has a lot of write-offs, very low quality work. And so, that generally doesn't play into things. But that's a very easy way for these hourly firms to manage their employees and to manage their firm financially too. Everything's driven off the billable hour, which has a lot of advantages from a financial standpoint and running a firm and a structural standpoint, but it completely neglects, the focus on quality of work, the focus on, quality of output, because it's just focused on the time that goes into it.
Yes. And I think that from what I've seen, because I've worked with a lot of attorneys over the years as a therapist, is that's such a hard way of working for anybody, simply because we don't operate like that. Like some months, yeah, hitting a certain number of hours, no problem. You could hit even more. Other months, not so much. because, we go through these ebbs and flows in our lives where we're not as productive. And there isn't, I just know from my clients that there is that pressure of, even though I'm having a hard time this month, I don't have a choice but to bill this if I want to, get the bonus at the end of the year. And
Yeah, and a lot of my clients that do bill by the hour, that's how they were trained.
Yeah.
They're comfortable with the model, and they're training their associates and junior staff the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And once you kind of learn how to do it, it doesn't seem to be as taxing. Like talking to my clients who are actively doing this model, and they're billing their
Mm-hmm.
hours too. They seem to have an easier time dealing with it than someone that's new to the profession. And I guess it makes sense, right? If you've got
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 years experience billing your time, it's going to come much easier to you.
Yeah. So what do you think older generations are, missing or overlooking when it comes to Gen Z?
Well, I think they're overlooking their own culpability in all of this. I mean,
Mm.
you're raising these children and you want them to have a really nice life. And so you put them in safe schools and give them the very best and,
Mhm.
teach them that, hey, there's more to life than just working yourself into the ground. You should take time for your mental health and you
Mhm.
should you should enjoy life as well. And you shouldn't be a slave to your job. All of these things. And then they're quite surprised when that's what they get.
Yes.
Like it's like, well, the kids you raise, that's the logical outcome of what you're going to see. And
Mhm.
it's hard as a boss to recognize there's a lot of benefit, in that approach. Um, I think where it gets challenging is when the demands that are being made are so out of line with the financial reality of running a business because
Mhm.
the person making the demands just doesn't know, right? They're just
Mm.
saying, well, here's what I need to live, and like, so this is kind of how much I need, so that's how much I'm going to ask for, without thinking about what, because they don't know,
Mhm.
financially, how is a business going to survive when output is down and expenses are way, way up,
Mhm.
right? That is not a good scenario for any business. So there's got to be some sort of happy medium there. And a lot of that for me starts with conversations.
Mhm. Yeah. So what do you think? So funny. A friend of mine sent me this on TikTok the other day, and it was this guy was talking about they have this Gen Z intern, and he's supposed to do this weekly wrap up. They said, "Hey, at the end of the week, can you just wrap everything up for us?" And what would most of us do? We'd write an email and say, "This happened, this happened, this happened." So apparently, this this kid, this intern, has been putting everything that's happened for the week into AI and creating these songs and these these songs that take people through the weekend and okay, let's go through everything. It's very interesting, it's very creative, and I think it's a really good example of yeah, it's not the traditional like email where everything goes, but what this person was saying was that it just puts everyone in such a great mood for the week and the weekend, and they're so excited. And so I know that with attorneys, it's a little bit more of a traditional, but are you seeing more of this creativity coming in? Are you hearing stories of like young people coming in and kind of shifting and changing things up?
I'm not hearing about
Mm.
that only because I suspect the only reason I'm not hearing about it is it just isn't something that generally comes up in our conversations. Normally, when we're talking about, employees, we're talking about problems.
Mhm.
If we're talking about employees that are doing well, generally that's what I hear. Like, so and so is doing amazingly well. Like, I want to keep him here forever. They're just the absolute best. And then, we talk about, what to do with that person to retain them and make sure they
Mhm.
grow, and then we move on. So we don't get into that level of detail about, people being ingenious about how they solve things or novel ways that they use
Yeah.
AI. But I have no doubt that that's out there.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For me, I see it because I felt the same thing when I came to your group to speak to them, which is I'm their age. So when, and I felt their pain, I really did, of how frustrating this can be and how difficult all of this is. And so it is, I can understand as the business owner feeling a little bit like I just need someone to do what we've always done and just to do that. And how it requires a lot of discomfort for the leaders to sit with the discomfort of maybe being like, okay, he's not going to write the email, but he is going to do this song. Let's see what happens. Right. Those little moments of this makes, I feel uncomfortable around this, but let's just see what happens. Let's see
Yeah.
if this is silly and ridiculous, or if it's something that's really changing things for people.
And it can be hard for some people, especially perhaps attorneys, to, give up some of that control.
Yeah.
But the other side of that, Tess, is this is not just a Gen Z conversation. I can kind of go through the list. Like you've got at the senior scale, the older employees. Oh my gosh, this person just doesn't understand technology and can't use, our apps that we're deploying, and is having a really hard time with making these changes. And then we've got the ones who have, oh my gosh, this person, they have kids, and I get it, like they need time for their kids, but they're always leaving to go this thing for their kid or that thing for the kid, or they're taking care of the kid over the weekend. And it's like, I just need you to be fully committed to work as well, because we need you here too. Or they're taking care of their sick parents, and that's it. We get it. We want them to do all of that, but we also need them to produce. Then you've got the person who's maybe more junior and up and coming, which is, this person, they keep on job hopping. Every 2-3 years, they're moving on to the next job, and they're really, really good, but they just don't have any loyalty. And it's hard to, work with someone like that, because they're going to be gone in 3 years. And then you get down to, the Gen Z and the stereotypes there. So I think at every age, a business owner who's unhappy with their employees can come up with, some of these common gripes, which are generational, yes, but they're also driven by the circumstances.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And I guess I'm curious, I mean, you brought something up that is that comes up all the time, which is someone has kids, the kids take up a lot of time and energy, and they don't have the same level of they just don't have the same amount of time and energy to devote to work. So what do you say? What do you do if you're running this business to
Yeah,
that
and
person?
I've got two businesses as well, so I understand these conversations, and I have these conversations, and that's just what it is. Tess, is you're probably tired of me saying this, but it really is a conversation and a series of
Mhm.
conversations talking about, look, this is the job that you have laid out. These are the
Mhm.
expectations. Here's what we're seeing. Like, what's going on, and what should we do about this?
Mhm.
Because it's not just step up or get out. That's
Yeah.
a very black and white response to a challenging situation. It could be getting them some additional help to do some of their tasks. It could be actually reducing their work hours and reducing their work responsibilities. Like, look, you're a
Mhm.
really valued part of the team, but recognizing these things, we're going to maybe adjust your role so you have that time,
Mhm.
and hand off some of those responsibilities to others. And then once when you have more time that you can dedicate, we'll look at adding more back to you.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a lot of other ways you can take it, to even just being there for them as a resource, and giving them some out of the box ideas that maybe they haven't thought of.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of opportunity there too, to just have a conversation. But I think it really is a conversation, because every case is different.
Mhm.
Worst possible
Absolutely.
thing, I think, Tess, would be to say, look, this is the job. You're not performing, so you're out the door.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you say to people who are underperforming. But if you want to keep them for the long term,
Mhm.
it needs to be a conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I also think there is some value in how someone leaves. Like, how does the if someone, this isn't quite right for them, this isn't the right place. So this isn't the area of law that maybe they want to focus on. There are ways that people can go and go in a way where everyone's like, okay, we all still like each other. We're all very, we all say nice things about each other. It doesn't have to be this issue. I think a lot of times what I see is just the fear of the conversation, not so much having the conversation, but just what am I going to hear? And in some ways, I know this sounds, in some ways it's easier for us to get stuck in this place of, I'm going to, just to not even know. I don't know why they're struggling, and just sort of staying in this place of complaining about it or being frustrated with it. But it's always interesting to me how much resistance we have to just simply having the conversation, and the fear of what this person's going to say to me. right? What's their response, both from the boss and from the other person of, oh God, what if they say they hate this job and they're going to leave tomorrow, right? And that, I don't know if you find that, but I see this a lot with my clients, preventing them from having these kinds of conversations that would solve these problems much faster.
Yeah, there is a fear around hard conversations, and it's not just the conversation. It's, to your point, it's the outcome of that conversation. Like, what's going to happen once I open that door? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what's on the other side of that conversation. We don't know what direction it's going to go. And if in the case of a good employee, I don't want to lose them, but I might have to. In the case of a bad employee, really don't want to let them go, but
Yeah.
kind of have to head down that path now. So yeah, there's a lot of concern. And when you have a business that's doing okay, sometimes for people, it's far easier just to sort of avoid that conversation
Yeah.
because things are okay. They're fine. Like, we're getting by. It's not perfect, but it's okay. And I'm going to go off and work on my stuff and just not deal with that situation right now. And I get it, but there is a time when, that situation may have to be dealt with, or the business and the other employees and the clients and the owner might suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so please, I know people are probably sick of me asking about lawyer questions, but I just think that this is, I think that this is such an interesting area of practice. And what I find so interesting about what you do is that you're doing something very similar in its own ways, that you're really just working with the person, very similar to being a therapist. Like, you're working with the person and where they're at and what they need right in that moment. But it is surrounded by this very interesting profession of people who not that lawyers like to argue, but this is okay. So let me back up for a second. This is the biggest thing that I found with working with attorneys as a therapist is because they are trained to look for all the ways things could fall apart, because they're trained to look for the ways that, there's a certain cynicism that comes with it. There's a certain amount of, like, not believing, that I've found that when it comes to coaching or working with attorneys, it's a real challenge because their training goes against everything that you need to adopt be in order to work on yourself. And a lot of the things that you're talking about, right? These changes that you're talking about people making, it kind of goes, it does maybe some of them go against this. Well, wait a second, shouldn't I be looking for the pitfalls, or shouldn't I be cynical about this particular thing? Do you get what I'm saying? So
I
I
do.
don't know if I'm
I
doing a
do.
very good
Yeah.
job of explaining
And
it, but
no,
do you know what I mean? It's just
you're doing a wonderful job of explaining
yeah.
it, actually. If I had to explain it, I would not do it as well as you are. Um, and that is definitely true with attorneys. It's also true with other business owners. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's some nuances to attorneys where they are great at issue spotting. They are professional
Mm-hmm.
skeptics. Like all consultants, a lot of their identity is wrapped up in being the smartest person in the room. And so, having to admit that there's things they could be doing differently is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just like it is for me, as a coach and
Yeah.
consultant sometimes. And again, there's people that are ready to have those conversations, ready to jump in, and people who are not. And
Mm-hmm.
for people that are not willing to make those changes, that are not willing to think about doing things differently, I'm not a great fit. And so, Tess, the people
Yeah.
I work with are the minority who say, yeah, I'm ready to make some changes for myself. I'm ready to make some changes to my firm. And here's why, right? My
Mm-hmm.
income's going to go way up. I'm going to work fewer hours. I'm going to take real vacation. I'm going to have an awesome life and enjoy running my firm. That's worth it to me. So those are the kinds of people I really enjoy working with.
Yeah. Um, what I think that and my guess would be is that some of the people that you are working with have those, that way of thinking that does keep them in that place, but they have to fight against those instincts. Um, and I think that there's that other part too, where as a therapist, as a coach myself, there are certain things that I have to fight against my own instincts, right? Of, I won't get into it, but I think that a lot of people in helping professions, we tend to be, um, we we tend not to stand up for ourselves in the same ways. We tend not to we aren't as cynical as maybe we need to be. If that makes sense. There's some, I'm not saying that all these pieces of being an attorney and these parts of being an attorney are necessarily bad. It's just more of, you're trained to think a certain way, and then someone comes in and goes, okay, that's great that you're trained to think that way. Yeah, keep thinking that way, but now you need to put all that aside and think differently, and think about this and approach all of this very differently. And it's all new, so it's going to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it exactly that way. I think they still have to think as an attorney and do great
Yeah.
attorney work. But for different kinds of skills and different kinds of outcomes, it requires different tools and a different mindset. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at growing a business, having that skeptical, rigid mindset is not going to serve you very well if you want to grow your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so share with us how people can find you, how they can get in touch with you. You've got I just want to say that you've got such a warm, calming energy and presence that it's funny. I can't even see you. Were you the CEO of this multi-million-dollar business?
No, it wasn't.
Because I keep thinking like, oh, was Alay once this hard charging CEO, and now, because you're so kind and you just have a very calming energy, which I can imagine your clients really appreciate that, because this is all scary stuff and new stuff that's hard to wrap your brain around sometimes.
It is. It's, and on top of that, there's a lot of anxiety that typically is happening too. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
even fear that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started coaching, I did not really have this kind of a presence. This is something I think I've acquired over the years, and it's just a
Mm-hmm.
part of who I am now. I'm a much better coach than I ever was, a manager or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I think being non-judgmental, being a good listener, and then knowing how to be supportive and yet how to push to get a
Mm-hmm.
result is a really key part of being a successful coach,
Yeah.
and something I really enjoy. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. So tell everyone how they can find you, anything that you want to plug, your podcast.
Sure. Keep it really simple. If you want to talk, just go to lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. You can schedule in a chat with me there. We work typically with the owners of law firms, and we help them build amazing law firms without working nights and weekends. So if that's something that sounds good to you, I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Yes, that sounds good. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for listening to the Gen Mess with Tess. Remember, we're not just fixing the mess, we're learning how to live in it.